In our lesson this week, we'll be talking about the number and nature of ethical norms. Our last lesson briefly discussed the number and nature of ethical norms and the various approaches to this question, number and nature of ethical norms. But this week, we're going to go a little bit more in depth on the issue of the number and nature of ethical norms. Now, what we mean by the nature of ethical norms is are they absolute or are they relative? In other words, are there any absolute values that transcend our culture, transcend our experiences, that are universally true throughout history? In other words, are there moral values that are universal in that whatever was right 2,000 years ago will be true and moral today? For instance, we believe that adultery is evil and a sin. We believe it was a sin 4,000 years ago. We believe it was a sin 2,000 years ago. And we believe adultery was not morally acceptable even today or 2,000 years from now. So we hold an absolutist view. Christians hold an absolutist view of moral values. So relativism, on the other hand, would say that there are no absolutes, that moral values are relative to the culture or the experience that you and I are experiencing now. So, for instance, homosexuality may have been wrong 4,000 years ago, may have even been wrong 2,000 years ago, but today, in our culture, in our context, the majority of people apparently believe that homosexuality is now a valuable lifestyle, so therefore now it is moral. That's called moral relativism. Morals are relative to the current situation or the culture that you're in now or your practical situation. Pragmatism, relativism. So when we talk about the nature of ethical norms, we're talking about, are the values absolute or are the values relative? Now, in absolutism, we have a Christian view of absolutes in that we believe that there are certain commandments or values or morals that are absolutely true based off who God is. Now, you have other people who are not Christians who believe in absolutes, but they believe there's an absolute law, that God's not absolute. In fact, they would be atheistic. They don't believe there's an absolute God, but they're absolutists if they believe there are absolute laws or axioms. And this is where deontology would be, and Kant, Immanuel Kant. Remember we talked about him in our earlier lessons. He would be a deontologist. He would believe that there are moral imperatives that are universal. Regardless of whether there's a God or not, they are universal. Now, what happens there is if your law is not based on a sovereign God who is eternal and universal, then it's based on universal laws. And if that's true, when the conflicts come, then you have to find a sovereign person down here to decide about the conflicts. So you see how that comes back to relativism and moral relativism? So as a Christian, I believe in absolutes, but I believe those absolutes are based on an absolute sovereign God whose character is reflected in the morals he's given us and his commandments. So absolutism and relativism, that's when we talk about the nature of ethical norms. We talk about whether they are absolute and universal or whether they're relative. Now, in your essay question, you're going to be discussing the metaphysical and the epistemological foundation to these belief systems. And what we want to discuss and what you'll be discussing is if a person believes that ethics are relative, then that comes from a certain metaphysical and epistemological foundation. For instance, if you reject God and say there's no God, then you're going to conclude that our knowledge is based on rationalism or empiricism, and the bottom line is if there's no God, then metaphysics, the cause of everything, has got to be impersonal. If the cause of everything is impersonal, and the way we know is through our empirical mind alone or our rational mind alone, then that means that knowledge is based off the foundation of us, And therefore, when we empirically observe the universe, we reduce the universe to chaos. So if we came out of chaos, then moral values are relative to how we feel now. In other words, if we're going back to nothing, then values are nothing more than what I subjectively want right now. So if we're reducible to nothing, then my somethingness and my desires and my values are nothing more than subjective. So therefore, ethical values become relative to whatever the greatest number or the strongest one say it is down here. So that's moral relativism. So what we want to understand is if you reject God as the cause of everything, the metaphysical cause of everything, and if you reject the Bible as the Word of God, then you're only reducible to values that are relative, based on what we subjectively feel, because ultimate reality is nothing, chaos. So my values and the order I place on things are nothing more than my subjective values. And so if my values conflict with your values, then we struggle to see whose values are best for society. So that's cultural relativism. On the other hand, if I accept the God of the Bible as the creator and cause of everything, then I believe that I am the image of a personal creator. And if his word is reflective of who he is, then the values in his word are reflective on his character. And therefore I have a substantial basis for absolute values that transcend time. As you'll see in our lectures there in our PowerPoint presentation. And then in the essay question, we want you to discuss these different views and the number and nature of ethical norms and antinomianism and generalism and utilitarianism. Those will all be relativistic ethical systems. On the other hand, absolutism, ideal absolutism, non-conflicting absolutism, conflicting absolutism, and hierarchialism are all absolutist systems based on absolutes. God bless you, and I'm always praying for you.